Hello, let's have a good chat about how you start out with your ARP after you have agreed on the title. We have a supervisor for you, and you are embarking on this last piece, which should be your best piece rather than just the last course to do. First part is that we need to work towards the timelines and the marking rubric. For each of the deliveries, you have a marking rubric, quite detailed, that is in your flow sheet. It's also in the course outline. That means that you know exactly what is expected for the next step, the proposal. If you look at the proposal, it walks you through the content, and it also has a portion there that talks about what kind of research you will do. That means that you need to decide, together with your supervisor, what kind of questions you will ask, how you will sample, the things that people normally don't do in business and therefore are concerned about. It's actually quite simple. It follows the principle of much easier to edit than to author. So rather than inventing a whole new way of how you do research in your topic, look at what others have done. That means that you complete your literature review before you do anything else. And that is not the same literature review as you have done for the BRP, because you are now, with probably a slightly modified title, onto actually doing something rather than just talking about what you might be doing. Big difference. So in the literature review, my suggestion is you break it into 4, 5, 6 different components, each of which goes specifically to what you're trying to accomplish. That means you don't have one big soup of quotes and literature review writing kind of flowing from one page to the next, but you break this into components that answer specific elements of your research. For instance, if you're researching something that goes to motivation among employees in a firm, then you probably have one section that talks about what motivates employees. There's probably one section about what firms have done to motivate employees. There's probably one section about how you communicate with employees to motivate them. Then there's probably one section on how you evaluate outcomes for processes like this to show whether it has made a difference or not. So logically break your lit review into several components. When you do literature review, something that is universally hated and misunderstood by people who don't do this for a living, remember that people who have written in journals before are usually professionals. They do this for a living. They go through a peer review before their article is published, and that means that what you read is a good standard. Use it. Look at how they write. You look at what they have researched. Look at what populations they have gone after. Look at their survey questionnaires. Take what you can find that is useful to you and then use that for your own approach. If I ask you to get into a race car and win a race, I'm not asking you to show me that you can make new tires, that you can build an engine, that you can paint a car. Don't get caught in those details. Focus on winning the race. If there already are tires, there's already an engine, there's already a car that somebody else has created for you, then that is what you use. Modify it as you need to and use it. Give credit, of course, when you cite anyone. A good approach to literature review is that you have an Excel spreadsheet open while you read the journals. I never read the whole thing. It's boring and drives you nuts. But what you do is you look at the abstract and you look at the conclusions, if the abstract is promising. If you find that abstract and conclusion tell you this is pretty much similar to what you're doing, then it's a good article. Then what I do is I read the article, and every time I come to a sentence that seems to be a good quote, I highlight that sentence, copy and paste that into the spreadsheet, and right next to that quote, I paste the complete citation. So I end up with probably a spreadsheet full of 150, 180, 90 quotations and their sources. Then you go through and you order them, how they fit into the different sections of your lit review, and then you throw out quite a few and you keep the best. Then comes the actual compiling into your lit review, and don't just write 16 quotes together. Have connective writing. Show that what you copied from a article that you gave credit to, how that is relevant. Show that it matters. Show that it shows current cutting edge thinking. Show that it might be different than what you have seen in practice. Talk about why that literature quote, that specific part of somebody else's work, is relevant to you. No one wants to read a long string of quotes that essentially show that you can cut and paste. Not much value in that. Once you have the literature review done, you have developed a good understanding how others have approached research, who they have asked, what questions they have asked, how they have analyzed those questions, and you then end up with a guide map to your own research. You need to show what research you will do, what questions you will ask, who you will ask, how you will ask. And remember, you can't beat people into submission for answering. You can't give them incentives. You can't put them in an uncomfortable position. That's not on. So you will then have a good idea for your proposal, what you will do for research. That means that after your proposal is accepted by your supervisor, you can then apply for ethics approval. That's a automated process. Takes about an hour or so to get through. And then you have your approval. Then you start your research. So a number of people that I've talked to over the past couple of days were essentially already formulating answers to the research question. That means you haven't done any research, you haven't done any lit review, but you already know the answer to your work. That's not a good way to go. It is perfectly okay if the outcome of your research shows that your original thinking does not work, and you possibly have then the ability to craft a different approach, a different answer, something that you didn't expect, but fact-driven it must be. Nobody cares about your opinion, but we care about how you draw conclusions and how you end up being authoritative, because you weave together what other people have done, what you have done as original primary research, and then you solidly conclude with recommendations based on that research. Keep in mind that your time is valuable. You will spend upwards of 200 hours on this work, if not more. And that means that if you bill yourself out at $200 an hour, then at the end of this exercise, we need to see real value so that what you do matters. We're not going to boil an ocean. We're not going to tell people that water is wet. We are going to do something that makes you a person contributing to an organization, to society, to a community, to your own development. If you look at starting a business, by doing something that is well-founded, credible, authoritative, and to the point that it can be implemented. Any questions? Let me know.